Doctors of Reddit, what was your, how the F, did you survive that moment? Emergency nurse once had a guy come in who had been cutting a tree with a chainsaw when it hit a knot in the wood and kicked up into his neck. He finished cutting the tree because he knew his wife would make him get rid of the chainsaw, put a towel on it, and drove himself to the hospital. CT showed no vascular damage, simple washout, and home the next day. One of the paramedics who saw him said to his patient, "That's a real emergency. Why don't we ever get those?" I was working in the emergency department when a toddler came in after falling out of a 3-story window completely unharmed. The sad thing was, they were from a rough neighborhood, and the mom hadn't noticed for about half an hour. Apparently the friendly apartment pot smokers found him, checked him over, and sat with him for half an hour, and when mom didn't show up they went to find her. The child was admitted overnight, mostly for social reasons, but it's just amazing how well kids bounce. Every time I think this question, the answer is usually meth. One guy got hit in the face, hard enough to let air into his brain cavity, and was being an absolute arsehole, which seemed to be normal for him, and literally asked, "Got any meth?" when I offered some pain relief. To my understanding, he recovered without any need for surgery. The human body is both scarily resilient and scarily fragile. I was a surgical resident in a small-town hospital. We got paged to see a patient for a spared piece of driftwood through the leg. We were thinking it was a nicked femoral artery and discussing if this poor kid needed amputation. When we saw him, he was standing on the skewered leg, taking a piss. Turns out the wood missed every single one of the vital vessels, and no fracture, just muscular damage. Not a doctor, but a fellow worker took a 35-pound steel plate, being propelled by 3,770 psi, equivalent to 188.5 car tires, to the face, sent him 15 feet in the air and 40 feet back, broke every bone in his face, lived, and back to work 8 months later. Early years in medical school, I saw a surgery of a policeman who was shot in head in a gunfight. The bullet went through his skull and brain. With my experience in games and movies, I always assumed a headshot is instant death. But that man survived it, and I was in shock. How this can happen? Turns out, in many cases a headshot can be survived. Not a doctor, so sorry, but it'll contribute. I will never ever forget a guy coming into the emergency ward with a king serrated combat knife sticking directly out of the top of his head. He was walking himself in. To this day I cannot comprehend that. Emergency physician. I had a patient that was shot 9 times, 3 bullets to the head. He didn't call an ambulance. He brought himself to the emergency department, and by that, I mean he drove himself to the emergency department. The 3 bullets in his head somehow didn't enter the cranium, so his brain was just fine. One of them entered his cheek and went underneath the skin to swing all the way around to the back of his head. He was discharged the same day.